I was asked a while back if I would do an episode on federal welfare programs like Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. Now, current events have kept me focused elsewhere with all the federal bribery that's already passed recently and even more expected. I figured this would be as good a time as any to ponder these programs. So we'll do that next on the Constitution Study.
There's one thing you have to know wherever you make your stand. Came from a long through line of everyday Americans.
Hello there, everyday Americans. Paul Engel here once again with the Constitution Study, where we read and study the Constitution. We teach the rising generation to be free. I'm glad you could join me. I hope you're going to enjoy today's message. Please head over to the website, constitutionstudy.com. Let me know that you're seeing this. Let me know that you're interested. Check out other articles and videos. Be engaged. You have no idea what it means to get a comment or an email or a contact from somebody who either enjoys this or even challenges politely maybe something that I said, but is engaged, is seeking the truth. It does mean a lot. It does help keep me going, and I appreciate that. I also appreciate people that go to the store and buy some stuff because that keeps me putting this stuff on. You know, I still have to pay for the hosting and the podcasting and the gear and the equipment, and so if you can help, that'd be great. I appreciate all of that. You know, today we're doing something a little different. We're going to look at basically federal welfare programs, and we're going to ask how that fits into our constitutional system. So let's do that. Alexis de Tocqueville said, "The American public will endure until the day Congress discovers that it can bribe the public with the public's money." Now, Mr. de Tocqueville had a point. See, once those in Congress discovered that they can bribe the people with their own money, we saw a dramatic change in the federal government. Before the 16th Amendment and the federal income tax, most Americans had very little to do with the government in Washington, D.C. So unless you were in the military, your only contact with a federal employee was at the post office. Now, with an ever-expanding pot of money to draw from, is it really any surprise that government officials would use that money to persuade people to do what they want? Now, you may think it's unfair of me to use the term bribe for these government programs. Well, let's take a look at that word. From Webster's 1828 dictionary, bribe is a price, reward, gift, or favor bestowed or promised with a view to pervert the judgment or corrupt the conduct of a judge, witness, or other person. A bribe is a consideration given or promised to a person to induce him to decide a cause, give testimony, or perform some act contrary to what he knows to be truth, justice, or rectitude. A bribe is that which seduces. So is a Social Security check a favor bestowed to pervert, in other words, to distort from its true use, the judgment of the American people? Are Medicare and Medicaid, the promise of taking care of old and poor for you, is that a promise to corrupt you? What about food stamps or subsidies for housing, energy assistance, welfare, and unemployment? Now you may say, no, those are programs to help people. And that may be partially true, but ask yourself this. How often has a candidate for office attempted to induce you to decide to vote for them by supporting the expansion of these programs? Now expand that question to other government programs like farm, oil, or education grants and subsidies. What about the federal government taking over the student loan program? Were elected officials attempting to get you to vote for them by promising to forgive your loans? You know, Benjamin Franklin said, "When the people find that they can vote themselves money, that will herald the end of the republic." Sound familiar? You see, it's not just Congress that is pilfering the public coffers for their own benefit. Ask yourself, do you support politicians who promise to give you stuff from the government? Now that the American people realize they can vote themselves money, they too are contributing to the destruction of the republic. Today, pretty much every government from Washington, D.C. to your state capital to many of your city and county governments are no longer in the business of representing the people. They are in the business of legalized plunder. Well, at least according to Frederick Bastiat. He was a French economist in the early 1800s. He asked, but how is legal plunder to be identified? Quite simply, see if the law takes from some person what belongs to them and gives it to other persons to whom it does not belong. See if the law benefits one citizen at the expense of another by doing what the citizen himself cannot do without committing a crime. Then abolish this law without delay. If such a law is not abolished immediately, it will spread, multiply, and develop into a system. Listen to what passes for political rhetoric today. How much of it involves legal plunder? The taking of that which belongs to one person in order to give or use it for someone to whom it doesn't belong. How much of domestic policy involves not if we will plunder others to get what we want, but how much we will. Tax the rich, eat the rich, asking the government to take care of others are all blatant attempts to get them to commit a crime for you. But wait, Paul, taxation is not a crime, you say. Well, that depends on what the taxation is used for. You see, from Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1 of the Constitution, we read, "The Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises, to pay the debts and provide for the common defense and general welfare of the United States." And before you claim that these programs are for the general welfare, remember the phrase is general welfare of the United States. The general welfare of the Union, not of the states or of the people. Put another way, the general welfare of the federal government, not whatever Congress thinks is a good thing. James Madison made this point when he served in Congress, quote, "If Congress can apply money indefinitely to the general welfare and are the sole and supreme judges of the general welfare, they may take care of religion into their own hands. They may establish teachers in every state, county, and parish and pay them out of the public treasury. They may take into their own hands the education of children, establishing in like manner schools throughout the Union. They may undertake the regulation of all roads other than post roads. In short, everything from the highest object of state legislation down to the most minute object of police would be thrown under the power of Congress. For every object I have mentioned would admit the application of money and might be called, if Congress pleased, provisions for the general welfare." That's right. James Madison, known as the father of the Constitution, stated in Congress that they did not have the authority to spend money on whatever they called the general welfare. So if Congress is limited to collecting taxes to pay for the common defense and general welfare of the federal government, what does that say about how they spend the rest of the tax money they collect from the American people? Others might say these programs are necessary. We need to take care of the poor and the elderly, and I agree. But is government the only way? Is it even the best way? Is it the way of freedom and liberty? Well, as William Pitt the Younger once said, "Necessity is the plea for every infringement of human freedom. It is the argument of tyrants. It is the creed of slaves." Let's face it, the vast majority of the American people want the government to take care of the elderly and the poor because they don't want to do so personally. Either they think it's inefficient or they just are not willing to pay for it themselves. And since if they tried to take other people's money to help them, they'd be charged with a crime, they simply get the government to do it for them. So where does that leave us with regards to Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, and the rest of the federal welfare programs? In short, I believe these programs are the worst type of greed. Yes, greed. The desire to get credit for what someone else has done. Someone else has earned money, and that money has been used to take care of the poor, the elderly, the indigent, whatever. And you want credit for it. You want to take credit for what someone else has paid for. Yes, you contributed to Social Security, but it's a Ponzi scheme. As defined by Investopedia, quote, "The Ponzi scheme generates returns for early investors by acquiring new investors. This is similar to a pyramid scheme in that both are based on using new investors' funds to pay the earlier backers." And this is exactly what happened. The government promised to put your money in a lockbox to hold until you retired. Instead, they used that money to pay early beneficiaries. Then they took what was left over and dumped it into their general fund, leaving you with nothing but IOUs. So now you have to pay taxes to replace your money, which the government embezzled from Social Security, a program that it created illegally since there's no constitutional authority for it. And as with any Ponzi scheme, the early investors make profits, while the latter ones get taken to the cleaners. What about other government welfare programs? Organizations that vet private charities suggest that no more than 30% of the organization's budget should go to administration, and at least 70% should go to the targeted beneficiaries. In fact, good charities have 90 to 95% of their budget given to the poor and needy they claim to support. They take care of themselves on as little as 5% of their donations. Now compare that to reports on the finances of government agencies, which shows that approximately 70% of their budgets go to the bureaucrats, and only 30% actually goes to the poor. Now tell me, who's the greedy, money-grubbing class in this situation? Paying taxes to help people that gets deferred to the bureaucrats to make you feel better is deluding yourself. As I once told my grandfather, I could take half of what the government takes for Social Security, give it to my elderly family members, and we would all be better off. In short, these programs are not only inefficient, they are criminal, at least at the federal level. There is nothing in the Constitution of the United States that delegates to Congress the power to collect taxes to redistribute funds as they see fit. There is nothing to grant Congress the authority to meddle in taking care of the poor, the sick, or the elderly. It is the greed of both the politician and those who support these programs that have not only helped steal from you what is rightfully yours, but use those bribes to destroy the opportunities for those in need to better themselves. So the next time some politician who represents you supports even continuing these programs, much less expanding them, call them what they are, thieves and extortionists. And when they claim you hate the poor for wanting to defund these programs, ask them how loving is it to steal from others to line the pockets of those in government at the expense of the poor. And when the poor or elderly complain that you're taking away their benefit, point out just how much you could have given to organizations that would help them. But you can't, because the government is wasting 70% of what they take. I don't expect anyone who has succumbed to these bribes of government to willingly wean themselves off of them. But maybe, just maybe, if we teach the rising generation to be free rather than slaves to the government, they will have the willpower to stand on their own 2 feet. I hope you care about the poor and the elderly. I hope you donate to organizations that help. I do. But having the government steal your money to do it, and to do it so badly, well, it's criminal. And the only reason they get away with it is because they're the government, and the American people let them. Opposing Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, universal health care, food stamps, all of these federal programs is not mean. It is mean to take money and have it squandered so that crumbs can be given to the poor. It is mean to squander 70% of your resources and then take that 30% to the poor and claim you're some philanthropist. No, you're greedy. And for those of you who support these programs, really, stop, think. If you gave $100 to charity and you found out they pocketed 70 of it and only gave 30%, $30 to the poor person you wanted to help, what would you do? If you contributed to a GoFundMe page and found out that 70% got skimmed off the top for the people organizing it, what would you do? Well, you'd probably sue them. Yet the government does it every day. Why? Because the government, especially the federal government, is not designed to take care of the people. It's designed to protect their rights. The only reason government gets away with it is because we let them. We let them steal. We let them destroy the American system. We let them enslave the poor. Yes, enslave them. They are so dependent on the pittance, the crumbs they get from the government, they don't realize the government's getting rich off of them. They don't realize that the government has wasted twice as much as they've given to them, more than that. There's a reason why our founding fathers said, leave the federal government to foreign affairs, leave the domestic affairs to the states. At least the states, you have more influence. But even the states are no good at this. When have you ever seen a government program run efficiently? And as if that isn't bad enough, what we have is a federal government using their bribery of the Social Security and these other programs, not simply to control the American people, but to control the states as well. You will do this, or this funding will go away. We've all been bribed. All of us. When are we going to wake up and realize that we have been bribed, and that bribe is killing us? It's destroying our rights, our liberty, our freedom, our abilities. When are we going to stop looking to government to do for us what we should be doing for ourselves? As far as I'm concerned, they can get rid of Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, take every dollar I've given to those, and you've already blown it. You've already burnt it. Let's go back to the rule of law. Congress has no authority for Social Security, therefore it should be shut down. Now, I agree that maybe we phase these things out because people have become dependent on it. But if we don't teach ourselves and our children, the next generation, just how corrupt, evil, and criminal these things are, they're never going to go away. You think the federal budget is bad now. Look what happens as Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare grow. Pretty soon, we're not going to be able to pay the interest on the debt, much less to protect ourselves. So for the person who asked me to talk about these welfare programs, I'm sorry it took so long, but I hope you did enjoy the topic. I hope everybody got a chance to think. And I hope I'll see you again here next time on the Constitution Study.
There's one thing you have to know wherever you make your stand. Came from a long through line of everyday Americans.